Welcome back to Tracing the Sky. So in the last video, we looked at how we could do a simple experiment to figure out how the sun was moving through the sky. We put a stick in the ground and looked at how the shadow was changing over time and used that to figure out how the sun was moving. Now it's really remarkable that we could use something so simple to figure out something so important like the length of a year. Now, this isn't an experiment I made up. This was a technique used by many ancient civilizations and astronomers to figure out how the sun was moving over time. And we actually have a word to describe this. It's called a gnomon. A gnomon is any stick or device that you put in the ground with the purpose of measuring the shadow so that you can understand how the sun's moving. So a random stick in the ground that's casting a shadow, that's not a gnomon. For it to be a gnomon, you have to put it in the ground with the express purpose of measuring the shadow so you can understand how the sun is moving. So last time, our main focus was on the length of the shadow. We really focused on looking at when the sun was highest and the shadow was shortest and comparing that over time to help us understand how the sun moved. But you can also look at the direction that the shadow was pointing to help you understand something else really important. Remember, if the sun's rising in the east, then the shadow is going to be pointing west. It's going to be longer, right? And as the sun moves from east to west, the shadow direction is going to change its direction too. And so you could use the direction the shadow's pointing to understand how the sun's moving over the course of a single day and actually help you tell time. So as ancient astronomers used their gnomons to make observations, they realized that they could create a device that would help them tell time. By combining a gnomon with a flat surface and some markings on it, they were able to create a device that would allow them to tell time at a glance. They could look at which marking the shadow was pointing at to figure out what time of day it was. As the sun was moving, the shadow's direction would change, pointing at a different marker throughout the day. These devices are called sundials, and they're some of the early instruments that astronomers and civilizations would use to tell what time of day it was. It's pretty remarkable all the different things we can learn about the sun just from its shadow and all the different uses we can use from something as simple as a shadow. Now, before we turn our attention to the moon in the next episode, I want to tie together everything we've learned about the sun and the stars and make one really important connection that will be really valuable to us down the road. And so I want to remind us what we know about the sun and how it's moving over the course of a year and how the stars move over the course of the year. Now, when we last looked at the stars, we were using the sunset as a point of reference. If you remember, what we would do was go out and look at the stars right after sunset and see which constellation was rising in the east. And one thing we saw was that after sunset, the constellation that was rising in the east would have drifted a little further west each day. So in the time it took the sun to go from sunset to sunset, the stars would have gone all the way around and a little bit more. And over time, we would see a different constellation rising in the east. Now, what I want to do today is look at it from a slightly different perspective. What if we look at which constellation is rising in the east right before the sun rises? We should expect to see something similar, but I want to look at it from that perspective to help reinforce a few ideas. So let's have a look. Okay, so here we are facing east, and you can see that Aries is just rising in the eastern horizon, and it's about 3 a.m. in June, and so the sun's going to be rising fairly soon. And so what I want to do specifically is see that the sun's about to rise and then just jump forward until we hit 3 a.m. of the following day. And I want us to see if Aries is in the same spot. So right before sunrise, if we can essentially go forward 24 hours, is Aries in the exact same spot or has it moved? Now, if you remember our previous experiment doing something similar, in the time it took the sun to go once around, the stars had moved a little bit further. So where do you think Aries is going to be? Is it going to be a little further east or a little further west or in the exact same spot? So think about that, pause the video if you want, and when you're ready, press play to see us do this experiment together. Okay, let's do this together. I'm going to move us forward an hour at a time, but I'm going to go pretty quick. We've seen a lot of this before, and I mostly want us to see where Aries is 24 hours into the future. The first thing I want you to just see is that the sun is rising here and is traveling from east to west, just like we would expect it to. And so if we keep going and we go all the way back around to 3 a.m., we can see that Aries has moved. It's not in the exact same position. Now, it's true, it's only moved a little bit, but we can see that it has moved a little bit. It's a little bit further west and further up, right? It's risen and gone to the west. So it's doing exactly what we would expect, right? What we remember from the stars is in the time it takes the sun to go once around, the stars have moved all the way around and a little bit further along its path. And so that's exactly what's happened with Aries. Now what I want to do is jump us forward a day at a time. So we're going to jump forward 24 hours and just validate what we're seeing. So as we jump forward an entire day, we see that Aries has shifted a little bit more. And we can do that another day, and Aries has shifted a little bit more. Okay, so we can keep doing this and see that Aries is moving a little bit further along its path every single day. So now what I've done here is I've made sure we can see all of the constellations in the zodiac that are visible. And we can see Aries and Pisces and Aquarius and so on. And so if we continue to move forward one day at a time, you can see that a different constellation is now starting to rise. We can see Taurus is now rising in the east. And now just to remember and put this in perspective, if I were to jump forward an hour or two, we would see the sun rising, right? So again, what I want us to think about is that the constellations are all moving from east to west over the course of a single day, right? All the stars are going east to west over the course of a single day. But the sun is lagging behind these constellations. You can almost think of these constellations as a ring around the earth, right? That they're all moving from east to west, but that each day they're going once around and a little bit further, and the sun is lagging behind. And you can almost picture the sun moving through these constellations and lagging behind every single day. Now, the interesting question is, how long do you think it will take for Aries to come back around? There's a pretty important clue we have from our last couple videos where we've looked at the sun and how it's moving over time. Can you take a guess? Maybe pause the video and think about this and try and imagine what the sun might be doing over the course of a year that we know about and how that might reflect upon the zodiac and which constellation is rising in the east. So remember, it's July 19th right now in our current clock. When we first started this, it was mid-June. So when do you think Aries is going to be rising in the east again, right? Right now, it's traveling a little bit further west each day. It's going to keep doing that. Eventually, it'll be setting in the west. And then how long will it take for it to come back around and be rising in the east again? Okay, so to help make things easier on us, I've marked where Aries was when we were first making these observations earlier in this video. And if you didn't make note of it at the time, the date was June 10th, 2024 at 3 a.m. So this red marker here is where Aries was on that date and time. And so now it's May 24th at 3 a.m. of 2025. So we've gone almost an entire calendar year, right? And you can probably guess where this is going. If I move us forward another day at a time, well, we're approaching June here, and we can see that Aries is rising, and that if we go all the way to June 10th at 3 a.m., Aries is in the exact same spot. So if you guessed this, you were right, that it takes an entire calendar year, right, the sun's annual motion, for the constellations to come back around and be rising in the same spot. So it takes a year for that to happen. So there's this wonderful relationship between what we're observing with the constellations and the zodiac in particular and the sun's motion. It looks as if the sun's lagging behind the stars, so much so that it takes a year for the sun to lag behind all the way and come back around to where it started. Another way to think about this is every day the constellations are moving a little bit further ahead than the sun, and over the course of a year they're continuing to follow that motion, and eventually after a whole year has passed they'll be back to where they started. Well, we have come a long way in understanding how the stars and the sun are moving over the course of a single day and an entire year. In the next video, we're going to turn our attention to the moon and see how it moves. And that'll really round out our understanding of ancient astronomy and the kinds of things that most ancient civilizations were observing at the time. So I hope you'll join me for the next video. And just a reminder, if you're liking and enjoying this video series, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time.